We're Americans. We love comebacks. We love the comeback story. Is this the greatest comeback in the history of college football? The two-team conference of Washington State and Oregon State is targeting Boise State, San Diego State, Colorado State, and Fresno State as new additions in a reimagined Pac-12. Those schools are expected to soon apply or have already applied for membership into the conference, the first step in the process to complete the deal. They would join the league starting with the 2026 school year. Commissioner Teresa Gould and officials from the Pac-12 have spent the last year examining possible options for their future after 10 schools left the league for the Big Ten, the Big 12, and the ACC. They have long held the belief that they can preserve the Pac-12 brand by reconstructing the conference through expansion, using its 108-year-old tradition, history, and assets to attract new members. This is expected to be the first phase in a multi-phase expansion endeavor to reach, at the very least, 8 schools, because that's the NCAA's minimum required to qualify as an FBS conference. If the aforementioned 4 join, the league needs 2 more to complete the process. Simple math. It must reach the minimum of those schools by July of 2026 to end the end of the NCAA's 2-year grace period. Okay, that is key. The Pac-12's board must approve any membership applications and is expected to do so soon. The deal could be finalized by the end of the week. The expansion is not inexpensive. Each Mountain West school is contractually bound to a $17 million exit fee. I saw 18 reported somewhere else. The Pac-12 is on the hook for an additional 10 to 12 million penalty fee for every school they require as part of a scheduling agreement the conference struck with the Mountain West. So that is $27 to $29 million per school. After months of examining future options, league officials determined to reimagine the conference with an expansion approach. In negotiations with potential new members, Pac-12 officials and third parties have presented a plan that features a new media rights agreement worth more than the Mountain West Conference current or future television package, as well as the sponsorship potential of the Pac-12 brand. The 2 schools offer attractive assets, meaning Washington State and Oregon State. They could total millions as a result of the 10 schools departing the conference, including monies from the Rose Bowl contract, College Football Playoff, the NCAA basketball tournament units, and Pac-12 Enterprises, previously the Pac-12 Network. The league lost its designation as an autonomous power conference, a moniker that gave it more voting privileges within the NCAA governance and more revenue in the CFP distribution model. Although, let's keep in mind that Washington State and Oregon State are receiving a cut. It is unclear if the conference could regain such a designation. During Pac-12 Media Days in Las Vegas in July, Gould hosted media members, administrators, coaches, and players for a gathering to celebrate the conference, projecting a bright future and suggesting a potential rebuild. Quote, "There's a lot of interest in having a high-level conference rooted on the West Coast," she told Yahoo Sports then. Quote, "There's a lot of interest in our communities and fan bases. A lot of people care deeply about the Pac-12 and the Pac-12 brand. There's a lot of nostalgia about the possibility of a rebuild." The Pac-12's first expansion phase considers geographic and cultural significance while serving a blow to the rival Mountain West. The Mountain West Conference, a 12-team football league, counting Hawaii, would lose some of its top brands despite a scheduling alliance with the Pac-12 that many projected to end with a reverse merger or a merger with Oregon State and Washington State. That's why this is so intriguing, among other things. However, earlier this month, negotiations broke down between the Pac-12 and Mountain West over adding a second year to the 2024 football scheduling alliance, a fight that most notably involved financial differences, according to those with knowledge of the talks. The move by the Pac-12 could ignite another round of realignment, at least for those schools at the Group of 5 or even FCS level. In needing to fill departures, the Mountain West is likely to evaluate possible members to elevate to FBS. The Pac-12's move may have another ripple effect on a grander stage, the college football playoff. Given the departures in the Pac 12, CFP leaders last year voted to change the 12-team expanded playoff format. They removed one automatic qualifying spot, going from 5 to 4, and added an at-large bid for a format that features 5 AQs for the highest-ranked conference champions and 7 at-large bids. In the next 2 years, the Pac-12 champion is not eligible for an automatic qualifying spot as it does not meet the CFP's conference minimum requirement. However, starting in 2026, the champion of a rebuilt Pac-12 would presumably, big word there, be eligible to receive an automatic bid. Washington State, Oregon State. So it's been kind of comical to see that this Pac-12 has become a Pac-2, and why in the world would they stay together when everybody is left? And these two schools, or so we may have thought, would be trying to save themselves and moving on to somewhere else, whether that be Mountain West or the Big 12. And I have certainly proposed that side of what could be the future, that result, Washington State, Oregon State, leaving what is left of the Pac-12/2 and completely disbanding the conference to nothing, and the conference implodes and is no longer in existence. Let's understand that even though the Pac-12 does not play football this year, does not play athletics, it is still technically an entity as outlined in this article. So while that has been something that I've thrown out there as, well, looks like Washington State and Oregon State are going to have to find the best home possible, which looks like it would be the Big 12 and probably will wind out being the Mountain West Conference. Let's also understand there is a reason why there is still a Pac-12. There still is a Pac-12 commissioner. So the league did not disband and still has assets. So that's been a talking point that we've gone over because on a sports level and on the surface, it appears ridiculous to have two teams in a league that are actually not in a league in a practical sense this football season. They're just floating out there and they just cut a deal to the Pac-12. But behind the scenes and under the surface, the Pac-12 is still operating as an entity with all the assets that we have read about. And also, it was not Washington State and Oregon State that cut that contract deal with the Mountain West. It's not like they reached out to the Mountain West and cut a deal between the MWC and those two schools, and they just happened to cut the same deal. No, that was a Pac conference deal with the Mountain West. So while on the field, the Pac has been dead and presumed dead and gone, it's not as an entity. And this is proof of it right there. So there has been reason for the Pac conference to stay together, for them to maintain a commissioner and two teams, because lo and behold, they are rising from the ashes. And I love it. It is good to see. I don't like it for the Mountain West. I do not like it for the Mountain West. And there can be all sorts of models that we can put together of what this could look like. We know that it's going to be 6 in the Pac-12. Of course, they need to get to 8. Of course, they've got other candidates in mind. And most of those candidates, you would think, will be coming from the Mountain West Conference. So just because they did not offer an invitation initially to any other schools did not mean a la other conference expansion that they will not offer other schools. They probably want to get to 12. They obviously want to take in schools that are going to add value and not just hit a number, but I believe they would like to get to 12.
Yeah, I think they're waiting to see what happens with the ACC. I think this is the best move you can make if you're Oregon State and Washington State. It's not the move fans want to make. They want to get into the Big 12 or the ACC. That's not happening in the short term, or else that's the avenue they would pursue. You go and get these particular schools for a couple different reasons in a 3-in-1 sort of bucket. The 3 is Boise State, Fresno State, San Diego State. From a football branding standpoint, are the clear-cut top 3 teams you would take from the Mountain West. There is no fourth that you automatically lump in. And so why would they land on Colorado State? Probably because they're in the Fort Collins area, which captures at least some of the Denver media market. That's my guess. Denver, I think, is a top 20-ish, top 20, top 30 media market in the country. That's probably why they landed on them over UNLV. Now, my suspicion is that they have a couple Mountain West schools on standby here. Because the Pac-12 makes this announcement, they do not have to announce who their next 2 schools are going to be until next summer. They could take all the time that they want. It's important, I think, that they make this first move so that they have a selling point to schools that they're going to try to allure. I would pick up the phone and call teams of the American and see if they're interested. They might not be, but I would pick up and call teams in the Sun Belt Conference, for instance, and say, hey, if we want to expand our reach down south, do we go into the Sun Belt? Do we grab Texas State, for instance, who have got a really strong football program at the moment? I don't see why that's not an appealing option if you're going to throw geography to the wind. But I suspect they have a couple Mountain West schools waiting on standby to form the best, Pac-12 that they can with only Mountain West teams. But what they're waiting for is the ACC. If chaos ensues in the ACC, which is possible, but I don't think likely, the most likely scenario is Clemson and Florida State leave, and then the ACC just continues as is. But if any of those ACC schools become available, you would take any of them, over another Mountain West team in 2 seconds or less. That's what you would do. So the Pac-12 is now going to wait. They've made this announcement. This is a really good first step for them, but they have to get at least 2 more schools by July 1st, 2026 before they can actually be a conference. So they're going to wait and say, hey, what if Cal and Stanford become available because the ACC does a Pac-12 and ceases to exist? Or what if they decide they don't like being in the ACC and they're able to get out and they'd rather come, play in a more regionally based conference? You take Cal and Stanford, again, in 2 seconds. What about SMU? They want to be in the best conference possible. What if they don't like? I imagine they'd want to stay in the ACC, but if the ACC implodes, then they become available. Or Syracuse, or Wake Forest, a Boston College, a Pitt. You look around, probably not Pitt, they'd go to the Big 12. But I think that for Oregon State, Washington State, and the Pac-12 is 6 teams right now. It's going to have to get to at least 8. I would call American Conference schools like Tulane, see if Memphis would be interested, or UTSA, and maybe have those 2 schools come over and say, hey, let's build a G5 league whose conference champ is going to get in to the college football playoff every single year because we're so much better. That's what the pitch has to be. Would Tulane and UTSA, for instance, see that as sufficiently appealing? I don't know. That's the honest answer. I don't know. Probably not, but it's not impossible for them to theorize, hey, if we leave with our brands, the American, it's now significantly weaker. And so their conference champ will have a chance to get the G5 playoff berth, but it won't be as strong of a chance as a league that's got Oregon State and Washington State, who are still looking like strong programs. I mean, for goodness sake, look what Washington State just did to Texas Tech on Saturday. They blasted them into oblivion. John Matier, a quarterback, ran for almost 200 yards. If you go into that league and you get it to 10 to 12 schools, like just hypothetically, the 6 that you have in the Pac-12 currently with the 4 new Mountain West teams, if you add Tulane, UTSA, let's say North Texas and Rice, you start to take a foothold down south, you've got a significantly weaker American Conference that is essentially Memphis and South Florida. And that conference champ is going to have a tough time getting in over a conference champ who's had to battle San Diego State, Boise State, Fresno State, Colorado State, Oregon State, Washington State. So that's the shortest explanation that I can give on that.
No, and it's a good one. And it's a lot that we covered this morning in regards to, but without the ACC slant on actually the implosion, because man, I just got to think that there's a layer of Louisville, Virginia Tech, NC State. If they can't get to a Big Ten or an SEC would be more likely that that's where the Big 12 wants to go with Pitt, as you mentioned. And then Stanford, Cal, they weigh their options in regards to, do we come back to the West Coast? We're much kinder to all of our Olympic sports. We keep everything on the West Coast. We're more aligned out here. And if the television deal is anything close to what the ACC is, the new ACC, the trimmed down ACC, then Stanford and Cal could come back.
Yeah, and I think academically, Cal and Stanford have an inherent disposition towards rejoining the Pac-12. They like Oregon State and Washington State, of course. They were with them for a long time. But being in the same conference, which is about football, yes, but other things as well, with Boise State, Fresno State, Colorado State, and San Diego State is fine.
Yeah.
But I don't know how that's going to go over with the Cal and Stanford boards of regents.
That's
maybe
as well.
Now maybe
Duke and
versus Duke, North Carolina,
Wake.
Yeah, like this is Georgia Tech is Virginia. In the ACC. Virginia, yeah, like this is not. These two things are not the same, and so if those considerations weigh heavily on the Bears and the Cardinal, they'll stay in the ACC no matter what. If they prioritize football more, or if they don't like the travel, then maybe they'd return. I wouldn't hold out for that option as being the most likely scenario for the Pac-12 to be able to get Cal and Stanford to come crawling back. But is it worth taking a look? Yes, because they have the time. They don't have to make an announcement on that front right now. They've gotten to 6. They'll need at least 2 more, but they can wait and see. This can drag out well into 2025, and I think that that's the most likely outcome here is they wait and see what happens. Do FSU and Clemson get out? If they don't, then okay, we go back to our G5 options and we figure out which 2 schools we're going to take. But even if there's a 1% chance that you could wind up getting Cal and Stanford back, you absolutely go out and explore the path that gives you that option.
Stay tuned here at the Voice of College Football, and we are going to run down the candidacy of possible entries to the new Pac-12 to join Boise State, Fresno State, San Diego State, and Colorado State, whether those come from the Mountain West or other Group of 5 conferences, or how about the ACC? Stay tuned to Conference Realignment Talk right here at the Voice of College Football.